Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. How many times has a man started a conversation with you, and you walked away thinking he was just being polite, when he was actually trying to flirt? You see, the real reason so many women miss out on romantic opportunities isn't because the men aren't there, it's because they don't recognize the moment when it's happening. And today I'm going to show you the one thing almost every woman overlooks, and why it's costing you connection. Most women, especially those who are older and more experienced, often overlook one of the most common ways men initiate flirtation, through questions that are cleverly disguised as casual curiosity. When a man asks something like, "Are you here alone?" or "What brings you here?" it can seem like an innocent inquiry meant to spark light conversation or show basic interest in your presence. But the reality is that these questions are often calculated attempts to assess your openness and availability. Unlike overt flirtation, which can feel risky or too forward, these subtle inquiries offer men a safer route to engage without putting themselves in a vulnerable position. So they are trying to create a moment, a pause in the noise, where connection might grow. These questions allow them to test the waters, to see how you respond, not just with words but with energy, tone, and body language. Are you warm, engaged, and receptive? Or are you guarded, distracted, or disinterested? The man may not even be fully aware he's using a tactic, but on some level he knows that a question like, "What brings you here?" This is a gentle way of showing interest without setting off alarm bells or coming across as intrusive. Most women are conditioned to see such questions as surface-level politeness, especially if they've spent years navigating social environments with little expectation of spontaneous romantic energy. They may hear the question and respond quickly, briefly, and then move on, never realizing that in that moment someone was trying to connect with them. The real challenge is that women who expect men to be more direct about their intentions often miss the soft start approach entirely, and that's where the disconnect happens. The man may walk away thinking she's not interested, while the woman doesn't even realize interest was shown in the first place. It's also important to recognize that these questions aren't random. They're chosen specifically because they reveal information. If a woman says she's there alone, or that she comes often, or that she was invited by friends, the man immediately gathers insights about her social status, her confidence, and her openness to continued conversation. This information gives him the green light to continue, or the cue to back off. Unfortunately, when women miss these signals, they may unintentionally shut down something that could have turned into a meaningful moment. They interpret it as casual small talk when in fact it was the start of a deeper inquiry, one that could have led to genuine connection if handled with a little more awareness and presence. Understanding the true intention behind these subtle questions empowers women to recognize when someone is actually trying to bridge that initial gap between strangers. It teaches them to pause, to stay open, and to give themselves the opportunity to explore what might be behind a seemingly simple question. Because often those tiny moments carry the weight of potential, and if you're not attuned to them, you might miss the chance to let something real begin. When a man approaches a woman and offers help or asks, "Do you need help with that?" it may appear to be a kind gesture born out of politeness or good manners, but in many cases it is actually a subtle form of flirtation that most women don't recognize for what it is. This approach allows a man to appear confident and useful, while hiding any romantic intent behind a socially acceptable excuse. It's a low-risk, high-reward tactic. If she responds positively, it opens the door to further conversation and possibly connection. If she doesn't, he can easily retreat without embarrassment or rejection, chalking it up to simply being helpful. Older women in particular may be used to seeing this kind of behavior as a reflection of traditional courtesy, or even as an assumption that the man is just being friendly, which is why they often miss the deeper motive behind it. The truth is, when a man chooses to offer assistance, whether it's lifting something, reaching for an item, holding a door, or troubleshooting a situation, he's intentionally creating a moment of interaction. It's a way to start a conversation without needing a clever line or dramatic gesture. It also gives him a moment to observe how she responds, not only to the help itself, but to him as a person. Does she engage warmly? Does she express gratitude? Does she make eye contact or offer a smile? All of these small details give him feedback on whether it's safe to continue pursuing the interaction, or whether she's closed off or uninterested. This method is especially common among men who are either respectful by nature or more introverted and cautious when it comes to expressing attraction. They don't want to come across as aggressive or inappropriate, particularly when approaching an older woman who might be more discerning or self-assured, so they opt for a softer, more socially graceful entry point. Unfortunately, many women see it purely as transactional, and may respond with a quick thank you or a nod, and then disengage, missing that it was never really about the help, it was about creating a shared moment. When the opportunity to connect is missed, the man is left to assume she's not interested, when in fact she might have been open but unaware that interest was even being expressed. This kind of misunderstanding is more common than people think and results in countless missed connections. The reality is, in these small gestures of service or assistance, men are signaling something far more important: a willingness to engage, to be useful, and to build trust in a very short span of time. They are using action as a way to communicate interest, and when that is seen for what it is, it changes how the entire moment feels. Women who start to recognize these actions as potential expressions of attraction can begin to respond with more curiosity and presence, which can naturally turn an ordinary interaction into something far more meaningful. When a man asks questions like "What kind of music do you like?" or "Do you come here often?" many women, especially older ones, tend to dismiss them as generic small talk, without realizing that these questions are actually strategic probes meant to test compatibility and spark connection. These types of inquiries may seem cliché or unoriginal on the surface, but they serve an important purpose for men who are trying to determine whether a deeper conversation and potentially a relationship is worth pursuing. When a man asks about your interests, he's not just filling the silence, he's gathering data. He wants to see if you share similar tastes, if there's a cultural overlap, if you can laugh at the same references or bond over mutual experiences. This process helps him decide if he feels comfortable moving forward, or if the two of you are simply on different wavelengths. Yet many women respond to these questions without depth, giving one-word answers or rushing past them as though they're unimportant, which sends the message, intentionally or not, that they're not engaged or interested. Older women in particular may interpret these questions as superficial or juvenile, assuming that a man who is truly interested would say something more profound or emotionally insightful. But the truth is, these simple questions are how most men begin to explore emotional compatibility without making the situation feel too intense too soon. Men are aware that diving into deep topics right away can feel intrusive or awkward, so they often opt for these lighter, more universal topics as stepping stones toward deeper emotional resonance. The man is watching not just for your answer, but how you answer. Do your eyes light up when you talk about your favorite band? Do you ask him the same in return? Do you show interest in building that conversational rhythm? These little cues tell him whether the conversation has potential or if it's going nowhere. What makes this dynamic even more layered is that many women, particularly those who are confident and independent, have become so skilled at filtering out what they consider surface-level talk that they don't give these moments the space to breathe. They don't realize that compatibility doesn't come from grand romantic gestures, but from the flow and energy between two people as they share even the most basic thoughts. When a man asks if you've been to this place before, he might be trying to figure out if you're local, if you're a regular, or simply if this place holds meaning for you. Details that tell him something about your lifestyle and personality. The mistake many women make is assuming that if it doesn't sound like a movie script, it must not be real flirtation. But in reality, it is through these everyday questions that real connection is most often sparked. These questions are not filler, they are feelers, and when treated as such, they can be the gateway to something unexpectedly genuine. When a man initiates a conversation with a woman, whether through a question, a compliment, or a light comment, he is not only putting himself out there, but also scanning her response for cues that indicate whether it's safe to continue or if he should pull back. And this moment, often missed or misunderstood, is where everything hinges. A woman's reaction, whether she realizes it or not, acts as a green light or a red light, signaling to the man whether his interest is welcome or rejected, even subtly. If she responds with warmth, open body language, eye contact, or a genuine smile, she's essentially saying, "You're safe to keep going." But if her tone is short, her body turns away, or her expression is neutral or disinterested, the man interprets that as a cue to retreat. This dynamic is especially important for older women who might expect men to be more assertive or bold in their approach, not realizing that many men, especially those who are emotionally intelligent or respectful, won't push forward if they sense even slight disinterest. They're gauging not just what you say, but how you say it and how you make them feel in that moment. The subtle tilt of your head, the softness in your voice, or even the way you turn toward him as he speaks, all of these signals tell him whether or not you're open to continuing the interaction. Many women, without intending to, send a no without saying it, simply by being too distracted, guarded, or emotionally distant, especially if they're not aware that the conversation they're in is a form of flirtation. This becomes even more significant in environments where both people are testing the waters, like social events, public spaces, or casual gatherings, where overt romantic behavior might feel out of place. In these moments, the man's willingness to continue often depends entirely on how the woman makes him feel in the first few seconds, which is why so many potential connections fizzle out before they even start. The irony is that a woman might be interested but unaware that she's signaling disinterest through her energy, or that she's waiting for something more obvious when in fact she's already in the moment and just not engaging fully. The reality is that attraction doesn't usually come in the form of dramatic, unmistakable declarations. It comes through micro moments of mutual curiosity, comfort, and responsiveness. When a woman is present, open, and responsive, she's giving the man permission to continue, to explore, to take the next conversational step. When she's closed off, even slightly, he often shuts down the attempt and moves on, assuming she's not into it, even if that wasn't her intention. Recognizing that your reaction, no matter how small, plays a critical role in whether a man feels encouraged or discouraged, can transform how you experience social dynamics and how many chances for connection you allow to grow instead of letting them quietly slip away. As women grow older, gain more life experience, and become more secure in who they are, many begin to expect that if a man is genuinely interested in them, he will express it clearly, boldly, and without hesitation, which makes sense in theory, but doesn't always reflect how real-world attraction works, especially in today's social dynamics where many men, regardless of age, tend to approach with subtlety rather than grand declarations, particularly when engaging with women they perceive as strong, confident, and independent. These men often worry that being too direct will be perceived as inappropriate, intrusive, or overly forward. So instead of walking up with a line that screams, "I'm hitting on you," they choose softer, safer openings like asking a practical question or initiating neutral conversation, not because they lack interest, but because they're trying to read the room and gauge your vibe before making a move. The irony is that older women, having navigated countless social situations over the years, often interpret this softer approach as a sign of mere friendliness or casual curiosity, completely missing the fact that the man is flirting, albeit in a more cautious and respectful way. Many of these women are used to more overt forms of attention from when they were younger, compliments shouted across the street, assertive men buying drinks at a bar, someone confidently saying "you're beautiful" before even knowing their name. But as time passes, those bold, often superficial gestures become less common, replaced by subtler signs of genuine interest that are easier to miss if you're not looking for them. In this new phase of life, a man might express interest by asking about your opinion, offering help, or making light conversation about a shared setting or experience. And if you're expecting old-school fireworks, you may interpret his curiosity as nothing more than politeness. What complicates things further is that many older women hold themselves with a natural air of authority or independence, often without realizing how that energy can be intimidating to some men, especially those who are more emotionally mature and less inclined to use bravado to cover their nerves. These men often admire women who carry themselves with grace and self-assurance, but because of that admiration they tread carefully, hoping not to offend or come off the wrong way, which is why they resort to subtle engagement rather than overt flirtation. The moment a woman assumes that only obvious, confident, high-energy men are interested is the moment she starts missing out on quieter, more authentic expressions of desire. The truth is, being older doesn't mean romantic signals become louder. It often means they become quieter, more nuanced, and more respectful, which requires a different kind of awareness to recognize. This misunderstanding leads to countless missed opportunities, as the woman is waiting for a man to say something unmistakably romantic, while the man is waiting for her to notice that he's already trying, just in a more understated way. So when a man casually asks if you've read a certain book, seen a movie, or tried a specific restaurant, He may not be making random small talk, he may be searching for a way to connect, to relate, to spark something deeper, without putting either of you in a vulnerable position too soon. Recognizing that not all men will approach with the clarity or confidence you might expect doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means adjusting your lens to see the quieter cues for what they are: real, intentional, and often more meaningful than the flashy gestures you've grown used to dismissing or expecting. When a man makes the first move, whether it's through a question, a compliment, or an offer of help, he's not only opening the door to conversation, but also paying close attention to how the woman responds, because her reaction in that moment sets the tone for everything that follows, teaching him, consciously or unconsciously, how to engage with her going forward. And this is where many women, particularly older ones, who have developed clear boundaries and a sense of independence, can unintentionally shut down a potential connection without even realizing it. The truth is, the way a woman reacts in that initial moment communicates volumes about her openness, warmth, curiosity, and willingness to engage. And men often take their cues from that, adjusting their behavior accordingly. If she responds with openness, a light-hearted tone, and a willingness to continue the interaction, he interprets that as a green light to go deeper, to be more playful or sincere, and to bring more of himself into the moment. But if she responds with coolness, disinterest, or a flat tone, often because she doesn't realize it was a flirtatious gesture in the first place, he will likely assume she's not interested and pull back, even if she might have been open to more had she realized what was happening. What's important here is understanding that a man's initial approach is rarely a full reveal of his intentions. It's more of a test, a way to feel out whether it's safe to show more. The woman's response either builds trust and confidence in him, or makes him hesitate and retreat. This is especially true for men who are more respectful, emotionally aware, or who have experienced rejection enough times to make them cautious. They're not going to push through uncertainty or risk being perceived as intrusive, so instead, they rely on your energy to guide the interaction. Older women often believe that because they're experienced, emotionally mature, and have nothing to prove, they shouldn't need to perform or guide the interaction. And while it's true that no one should have to play games, being aware of the impact of your responses isn't about changing who you are. It's about being present enough to recognize the significance of a small moment. Even something as simple as returning a compliment with genuine gratitude instead of brushing it off, or responding to a question with enthusiasm rather than routine politeness, can completely shift the dynamic and invite more authenticity into the exchange. Women sometimes forget that flirtation isn't just about what a man does, it's about how she responds that encourages him to keep showing up. Every smile, every follow-up question, every moment of engaged eye contact becomes a signal that says, "You're welcome here," or "There's space for this connection to grow." Without realizing it, a woman teaches a man how to treat her by how she handles those early moments, whether she treats him like a nuisance, a stranger, or someone worth knowing. And once that tone is set, it becomes the emotional foundation for everything that might come next. If she's dismissive, he likely won't return with interest again. If she's warm but grounded, curious but confident, she gives permission for more depth, more effort, and more sincerity. And in doing so, she not only makes him feel safe to be real, but she also positions herself as someone emotionally intelligent enough to recognize genuine interest, even when it's wrapped in subtlety, giving both of them a chance to explore something meaningful that might otherwise have never taken shape. So, what does all of this really mean? It means that the signals you've been waiting for, those bold declarations, those grand gestures, might already be happening, just in a quieter, more thoughtful form. Men aren't always obvious, but they are trying. They ask questions, offer help, and make light conversation, not because they're bored, but because they're reaching out in the only way they know how, without risking rejection or disrespect. And the truth is, your response, how you carry yourself, how present you are, how open you seem, teaches them everything they need to know about whether to continue or walk away. If you can start recognizing these subtle moments for what they are, signs of curiosity, attraction, and genuine interest, you open the door to connection that feels mature, respectful, and real. You don't need to chase love, and you don't need to wait for someone to make it obvious. You just need to notice the conversation already unfolding around you and choose, with intention, how you want to respond. Because love doesn't always arrive with fireworks, it often starts with a question.